Hey, it's Matt Pinfield. It's KLOS, and it's new and approved. And one of my favorite drummers in history is Stewart Copeland. You know him from the Police and many other projects, but he's got this new album coming out, Police Deranged for Orchestra, which is very cool. And Stewart is our guest. Stewart, it's good to see you, man. How you doing?
Oh, very good. Good to see you.
You know, I know I mentioned this to you on another show, but I got to see you. You know, there was a concert for $2. It was unbelievable. It was a low show. You know, when you guys were first touring for the first album. I think it had to do something with a radio station there. But when I tell people that I saw the Police for $2, they are perplexed. They just can't believe it. I'm like, no. And, you know, I saw those tours. That was at Landos de Moore. It was in Philadelphia at this place called the Walnut Tree Theater. You guys were tremendous. And you were so nice to us. We were a station wagon full of like high school kids who bought tickets to come and see you play. And it was just phenomenal. You know, I loved it. You guys did an extended version of Roxanne in the middle. You did Can't Stand Losing You twice because of the amount of songs that you had at the time. But it was absolutely brilliant. And so I just want to say, by the way, thanks for being so nice to us when we were kids, you know?
Yeah, we were nice to kids because we needed to be then. Then we turned into real we got less nice. But back then, you know, you got that $2 ticket.
Yeah.
Our overheads were low back then too. I mean, that was, you know, all we needed was 2 hotel rooms. That's what your $2 paid for. 3 guys and one crew.
I heard
That's
a
how we
story.
could do it. Later on, when we had like 200 guys in the crew, 3 in the band and 200 crew. Okay, now the tickets are $300.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, I've seen pretty much every tour that you guys did, and including the great comeback tour when the whole New York police force, I think our fire department, got on stage and played with you guys at Madison Square Garden, which was a really great show, by the way, too. And
Yeah, well, that was the last show. That was
yeah,
the tour closer.
yeah, and it was an amazing night. Stuart, I got to talk to you. We're going to talk about the new album too, but I want to get back into your history because I love the fact that you're born in Alexandria, Virginia, and I love there's a connection to another drummer, of course, who you're friends with and know very well, Dave Grohl, because I remember going to his mom's house there.
Yeah, he's from Virginia.
Yeah, and she had a house in Old Town Alexandria for a while. And when he was doing the There Was Nothing Left to Lose album, we did the album special, me and him, for the country in his basement, sitting on the couch down there where they recorded it as a trio. And but so tell me about that and growing up, but actually moving to Beirut as a young guy. I once heard you say that you were like so interested in music and rock and soul and all the music that was coming out in that period of the 60s, but it took you a little while to get the records. Now, was the stuff coming from the UK when you were over in Beirut? Because I know your dad was, a CIA officer and operative. Tell me about that. How were you getting your music as a young boy over there?
Well, I was born in Virginia, left when I was 2 months old. My daddy was away on business in Cairo, Egypt, busy installing a dictator, the name of Gamal Abdel Nasser, who actually turned out to be quite a benevolent dictator, as dictators go. But when I was about 5 or 6, we moved to Beirut, Lebanon, where I did my teens, played in my first band. And our exposure to Western music was an hour a day on BBC, what is it called? Foreign Service. And the Voice of America was the American version. And they have like an hour a week, actually, of pop music. And there was one record store in Beirut where Salim would get records, English and American records, and sell them to the American, English, and Italian and French kids there, because it was where all of the oil families and diplomats of the Middle East, they sent their kids to school in Beirut at the American Community School. And that's where all this concentration of Americana, many of us were Americans who had never really seen America, but were fiercely, proudly wanting to be American.
Yeah, and that's amazing. So do you remember some of those first 45s and records that you got when you were a kid back then?
Oh, yeah. James Brown, Animals, Kinks, and yeah, Beatles and Stones too, but I was into the wilder stuff. And the first album I ever got was Help by the Beatles, actually. A friend of mine was going off to England for a holiday or family holiday and I gave him some money and said, "Bring me back something English," expecting some merch or something, but he brought back the album Help, which I soon memorized.
And played. I'm sure. Did you play a lot of the songs because you started playing in like at the school there that you had, the community school that was with other kids that were in government and military there. I know you played some of the dances and stuff when you were like 12 or started playing at shows.
That's
there.
right.
And
my
so
first show I was 12, and that cemented my vocation in music. When I'm 12 years old, playing, I Feel Good. And the big problem for me at the age of 12 was I feel good. Da, 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 bum, 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 bum. Okay, how many bums are there?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Bum, 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 bum. When does it stop? But the important thing was looking up, and there's Janet McRoberts, 15 years old. I'm 12. She's 15. You imagine the rising libido of the youngster banging on the drums there, and that to see her dancing to my groove cemented my vocation.
Yeah.
So that's what this banging stuff does. Cool. Yeah. I'm in.
That's great. I think it's amazing. And when did you eventually make your way back over to the UK when you became a member of Curved Air? About how old were you when you came back to the
I was about 15 when I got over to England. I was sent off down to deepest Somerset boarding school, and that's where I discovered Jimi Hendrix. And I didn't get to the States until I was 18. It was the draft years of the Vietnam War, and I was born in 1952. And when I turned 18, I had to register for the draft. But Draft Board 100, which was the draft board for all expatriates, everybody living outside of America when they turned 18, was Draft Board 100, which had a quota of 0. So as long as I stayed out of America, I was fully legally exempt until I got my number, which was 219, I think, a very safe number. And it was safe for me to go back to the States for the first time and see the country that I was from. When I think I was 19 by then.
And did you form a band at that point too, or were you kind of just checking out the music scene?
Yeah. I was in college in San Diego, Cal Western on Point Loma. Yeah. And me and a guitarist, we jammed Hendrix and had a bass player, and we played beer parties, keggers, and such.
That's great. That's cool. And so I'm sure you're doing Cream and a bunch of other things when you're playing back then, right?
That's right. A lot of Hendrix and Cream. It's always been the 3-piece format. It's just been my thing all the way along.
Yeah, and
the deviation was Curved Air, which had 5 people, including one musician who didn't even play anything. That's what you call a singer.
Yeah, and so that was it. But that was the only 5-piece, right? Was the Curved Air years?
Yeah, three players all the way down. I mean, fits in a car just nice.
It's amazing. And so when you formed the Police with Henry Padovani and Sting, and I remember getting the 7-inch of Fallout and Nothing Achieving. You were writing a lot of songs for the band at that period of time, right? And you were primarily the songwriter early on.
Yeah, I was the songwriter because I had to convince Sting to join this band. And I said, yeah, we got material, we got gigs, yeah, we got it all. I even got a guitarist, and I had to find a guitarist and teach him the chords. So yes, but they were not written from my heart necessarily or from any great musicality. They were strictly utilitarian. We needed punk songs so that we could play in the punk clubs, which was the only scene happening. And I'd come from a prog band where we played a lot of noodly, but this punk scene was like raw, do it yourself. We could have our own band and, run it ourselves without record companies or going to the man, for which we needed songs. Okay, I had 3, I think I had 4 chords, E, A, D, and G. Basically bass lines with yelling. Yeah, was pretty much what they were. And Sting was, it amazes me now that Sting put up with that stuff. But when Andy Summers joined with all of his technique and his sophistication, that's when Sting started saying, well, you know what? I think I can start writing songs for this band. And the rest is history.
Yeah, it's amazing. When you guys did All This and More, it was how much did that album cost to make? Was it like what equivalent of like $5,000 American or 6,000? It was. I know you
I
worked with
think
Nigel Gray.
no, I think it actually was more than that. I think it might have been $10,000-15,000 in American.
Yeah, but what a great record it was, and all that stuff that came out of it. I mean, it was, good
Yeah,
four
we recorded
singles
in about
deep.
20 minutes.
What's that?
We'd been playing these songs, so we recorded it very, very quickly over a few weeks.
Now, I've always wanted to ask you, I know this is kind of so Dead End Job, which was the B-side in England of Can't Stand Losing You, but in America, B-side of Roxanne. That's how much of a Police fan I am that I, of course, know that. Yeah, the song it's co-written by you and Sting, but it's definitely a song where a guy's really pissed off at his boss, and at the end, Sting's cursing. It's like people would never expect that character for Sting, right? So,
Well,
how much of it did he write?
That was a great example. That was a great example of bass line with yelling.
Yeah.
That was my bass line. And then I had some lyric that was even more dumb. And so Sting gave us an upgrade by, yelling something that made some kind of sense.
Yeah. It was great. I mean, you guys would always have those B-sides, and it's funny. Like you said, it was there was a feeling that you weren't really ever really a punk band, but it was definitely the opportunity to get the gigs, and you've explained that, which I think is great because then when
we were Carpetbaggers.
Yeah. Well, when you remember that period of where you guys actually did the commercial for, and you guys dyed your hair blonde, and I always wanted to ask you about that. What was that experience like? Was there any hesitation at that period of time because or were you like, hey man, we're going to get paid for this Wrigley's gum ad. Let's dye our hair blonde. They want a blonde band. Was anybody in the band like, I don't want to do it, or was everybody like,
No.
why not? We need the money. Let's take it.
I had already peroxided my hair, so I was already, shock blonde. And it was Sting, handsome old Sting, who got us the gig. They wanted like a rock star. It was the scenario was an agent in his office, and he's got his girlfriend, the singer, sitting on his desk complaining, and he's got some rock star at the other end, eating the sofa. One guy, hey, let's have a band eating the sofa, and let's make it a punk band. And so Sting calls Andy and me, and they need a band. So we both show up, and now there's three of us. And they look at, well, they're not looking quite wild enough. What can we do to mess them up? And so they dyed both of their hair blonde. And I harbor a suspicion that once I peroxided my hair, they were probably thinking, wow, that Copeland is so cool looking.
Yeah. As you were.
I very much doubt that that's what they were thinking. But anyhow, they paid us good money and peroxide all three of our heads, and the rest, once again, is history.
Which is amazing, and I look back on it. And, I want to say, when you guys put out the picture sleeve of Can't Stand Losing You, I just bring this up, was eventually banned. And it's like, when you look, it's the guy, it's just so, it's cool. It's the guy on the ice, he's literally standing on a block of ice. And, and you see like the rope and everything. That was, people were freaked out by that at first, right? When, and they thought.
Well, don't forget the heater.
Yeah, the heater that's melting the block of ice, which is unbelievable, on the back side of the sleeve with a photo of you guys in the water, in the melted water, which is, I always thought that was such an incredible picture sleeve. And I knew that it blew people's minds. We said, same with Roxanne, banned by the BBC. That's a bit of flim-flam. They just declined to add us to the playlist is all. But as far as we were concerned, banned! We were banned! We were too wild for the BBC! Banned! It's much cooler than didn't make the playlist. Yeah, it's amazing. And those early tours, seeing you, because I was on the East Coast and in Jersey, getting to see you in Philadelphia, and then seeing you at the New York Palladium, for Regatta.
Grendel's Lair.
What's that?
Grendel's Lair.
Yeah.
That was the gig in Philadelphia.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are so many really cool, there are just so many great shows, and I love that. And, but let's also talk about the fact that you were always doing other things. I always wanted to ask you how Klark Kent came along because, there were songs on the album that were really funny. Things like On Any Other Day, which were just, your sense of humor was brilliant. It shined through on the songs that, gave the album a comic relief. Although, like I said, there was always still a sense of humor even in Sting songs, too. There's certainly, but I love that. And on the side, you had the Klark Kent thing going on IRS Records, which was run by your brother, right? I mean, it's cool. It was always cool that you had a band called The Police, and then Ian and Miles had their things going on, which was FBI booking. The touring company that represented you guys, which was great, and IRS Records, and great. It's just the whole thing that you guys did as a family was super cool to me. We always loved
we
it.
were branded as fascists,
Which you were not.
No, we were not. I mean, it was just, I don't know what they were thinking, because I had The Police, and it was my own record label called Illegal Records, and it just kind of snowballed from there to Miles's record company, and my brother Ian had his agency called FBI.
Yes.
And one day he was working late, and the phone rings. His receptionist gone, and he picks up the phone himself, says, "Hello, FBI," and the voice on the other end of the line says, "No, this is the FBI." And they were hassling him for they're giving him grief, and he said, "Hey, look, come on over here, and if you can see anybody in this office impersonating an FBI officer, take them away."
Yeah, that's amazing.
But the Klark Kent thing was songs that Sting is a man of dignity. I couldn't make him sing those dumb songs. I have some compassion in my heart. I wouldn't do that to the man who brought so much into my life. But I actually had a hit with him. I played all the instruments, the guitar, bass, piano, and even sang the darn thing. Now, remember, I never even sang in the shower, never sang in the car, never even listened to the lyrics. I'm always listening to the riff. I don't know from singing. But for some reason, the BBC did pick up that song, did add it to the Radio 1 playlist. And in fact, it charted. That was our first single, was Me by Myself as Klark Kent with a secret identity. Nobody knew who it was. And for 20 seconds there, the zeitgeist of London was asking, who is Klark Kent? Frank Zappa, Neil Sedaka trying to be cool, and there was this question there, rather than the drummer of that dodgy fake punk band, those Carpetbaggers. And so we got on Top of the Pops, which is the national television show for pop music. And so the first time that Three Blonde Heads were ever on national TV was Thank You Very Much as my backing band. And there was old Stingo miming my bass line, thank you. And fortunately for me, Klark Kent disappeared without a trace in the nick of time before I ditched those two guys. And, and the police came along and ate everything in its path.
Oh, of course it did, which is fantastic. And, but it's like those songs Don't Care and Too Cool to Calypso. I remember having both those singles. And, of course, there was no photo of you on it. I mean, I think there was green vinyl. There was we had all that stuff back in the day. But I loved it, and anything that you were connected to. So when was it? When did you really feel, Stewart, that you realized that you guys were an absolute special band? You had this incredible sound, great songwriting. When did it really dawn on you? You're like, man, this is something really special that's really connecting with people. When was about that time for you?
I would have to say the clear realization of that happened about 4 bars into my first jam with Sting in 1976. He came over to my place. I'd called him up from London. I'd say, hey, I'm down here. I got this band, come on down. And he actually had been planning to make the big move from Newcastle down to the big city anyway, with his wife, child, and dog, old Turdy, ancient, smelly old dog that they loved dearly. And young Joe, who's now father of many, who was just a little baby at the time. Anyhow, I said, come on down. And I gave him my number. And one afternoon, the phone rings. He says, I'm here. I'm downstairs on the street. I said, come on up. And he came right up, and I had a bass I put into his hands, and we just started playing. And it was pretty obvious right away that there's a rare pocket, that connection between drums and bass that just, this is the groove. This makes, I'm doing things that never would have occurred to me with anybody else. And we just lit each other up. And that right there, without any songs, without Message in a Bottle, without Can't Stand Losing You or Every Breath You Take, we didn't have any of those. We just had my crap yelling songs, the bass lines. But even without material, we just knew we were in the right company. Henry Padovani, not so much. All he could play were the 4 chords that I taught him. and he pretended to already know them. So that when I, the rehearsal, okay, Henry, E, and then when it gets to the chorus, go to D, and he'd play them because I'd already taught him the song, and he was pretending to just be learning it fresh right there. That fools Sting for about 2 minutes. But, every band actually has that same sensation, rightly or wrongly. They wouldn't be in a band if they didn't have that feeling that we're going to make it. We kick our ass, don't we? We really blow us away. We really slew us. That's how bands work. That's just the band vibe. It's very mutually empowering. So I answered the question. Yes, of course we knew. But I think most other bands would give you the same answer.
Yeah, because obviously, you have to have that confidence. You know what I mean, to keep pushing forward and self-belief, right? You do.
Yeah. Swagger.
You have to have the swagger, and you guys certainly did. And the thing that's also great is there was always that amount of great space in the music. There was space for Sting's voice in the things that you guys played. It was just
in spite of my best efforts, there was space for Sting's voice. That was the advantage of having just three of us. If we had a keyboard player, that guy would have had to been doing something, or a second guitarist, they'd have had to been filling up the space. With just three of us, it was possible to keep it spare, yet urgent.
Yeah, it's absolutely, this stuff is just, it came out so great. All those records, and I just think back about it and I go, wow, what a journey that you guys went on, and deservedly so, because all three of you are so incredibly talented. Truly one of my favorite bands of all time, and love your playing. So I got to ask you, because you've met so many young people, and our mutual friend who we lost, Taylor Hawkins, who really was, he idolized you, he loved you. I listened to the podcast you guys did together, and it was fantastic. And but I want to talk to you about that. Who were the drummers for you, the people that you listened to, rock or otherwise, or even soul music, funk? What kind of stuff were the drummers that really made you feel like this is somebody that I would love to either emulate or learn from?
Well, by the way, Taylor came over here, this room right here, and we made a lot of jams that I cut up and put up on YouTube. At the Sacred Grove, Taylor Hawkins at the Sacred Grove, or Snoop Dogg at the Sacred Grove, or Neil Peart as well. And so they spent a lot of time over here. But the drummers that woke me up were, my daddy raised me to be jazz musician, so I had Louis Bellson, Gene Krupa rammed down my throat until Jimi Hendrix came along with Mitch Mitchell, and that was the last time I listened to a trumpet or a saxophone. Now it's got to be raging guitar. And Mitch Mitchell on drums, along with, I'd have to say, Ginger Baker.
Yeah.
Those three, Ginger Baker, Mitch Mitchell, and Buddy Rich, are the three sources at the headwaters. But then Bonham, Charlie Watts, and Ringo Starr, I came to appreciate later in life, because they were all too subtle for me at 17. I was into flash-o-matronics and thumping tom-toms, whereas Bonham and Ringo and Charlie were not flash-o-matic. They didn't have chops that I could aspire to as a wild teenager. More when my musical taste matured, that's when I was able to appreciate the subtlety and the size and the other qualities that those guys brought to the party.
Yeah, and absolutely, and it's great how you've been able to go between those two things, what you do, and I love that, and those people being your inspirations. I know what you're talking about. I think a lot of times in life we learn to appreciate things later on, because things that are important to us when we're teens and we get older, we're like, well, you know what?
I just discovered R&B, which I missed as a kid. Except for James Brown, who was just too cool. I missed R&B because of the gold lame suits. It all seemed so mainstream to me, and so pop, as opposed to hard, angry young man music. So I was more into aggression, Jimi Hendrix, and so on. So I missed R&B, which when I've been working on the Police Deranged for Orchestra with three soul sisters on the mic, which is fundamentally, it's the Supremes or the Chiffons or the Ronettes. And way, 40 years late, I discover R&B of that kind, the women groups, the three sisters, or even the Four Tops, that's my new fad that I'm all over. is discovering all this stuff that just I missed as a kid.
It's great that you're doing that too, and I love, with this new Police Deranged for orchestra. It's just cool that you decided to do that. Rusty Anderson, who plays with McCartney and was with Edna Swap and a bunch of people. He worked with you on some of this, right?
Oh yeah, he's the guitarist on the record.
Yeah,
And when I can get him, he's the guitarist on tour too. Which is when Paul isn't working.
yeah,
I can't afford this guy.
yeah. He's working with Paul McCartney. You're like,
we ride the bike path in Santa Monica. Every Sunday morning we're out there, and my buddy on bass, Armand Sabal Leko from Cameroon. The three of us were just chuckle buddies on the bike path, but they both play with me, and I can't afford either of those guys. So breakfast is on me every Sunday. Both those guys are on breakfast for life.
That's great. Yeah, Rusty's a great guy. We've become great friends over the years. So I'm just really happy he's with you, working on this record. When you had to choose police songs for this record, I see that there's stuff from Synchronicity and there are things from, of course, Ghost in the Machine and even some little Murder by Numbers, which is a B-side,
That's really obscure.
Yeah,
but actually on stage when we play shows, that's one of the big hits on stage. I don't know why exactly, but for some reason, I don't know, that's maybe third or fourth song into the set. That's the one that really wakes up the building. Go figure. Not only was it not a hit, I don't think it was even on any of the albums.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was just a B-side, but a great song that people love. You know what I mean? Because it's been reissued over the years. But it's cool that you decided to deconstruct that as well. It was always interesting to me, Stewart, that, you could do such interesting things, whether it's in an instrumental like Regalo de Blanc or, even something as simple but special. When I say simple, but it's really minimalist as Invisible Sun, which is just such a great song in the way that
it's another obscure one that I'm really fond of too. I like that one.
Yeah. It's just
just so simple. I think the only thing I do on is play a tom-tom. That's it.
Yeah, throughout, but it still builds. It's got this beauty, the lyrics, everything else.
By the way, that's a brag.
Yeah,
that's a brag when you achieve the most with the least.
Yeah,
that was a great song, and all I had to do was play my tom-tom. That's sublime. I can kick it with just one tom-tom,
which is great. Hey, so talk to me about when you decided to choose these songs and what was the basis for. Because I know you've done worked on tons of soundtracks. One of my favorite things that you did was when for Rumblefish you did Don't Box Me In with Stan Ridgway. I always loved that track. You know what I mean? Back when that came out in the 80s. Love that. But what was the thing that made you decide you wanted to do this and take these police songs and kind of do something different with them and rearrange them and derange them?
Well, they're kind of two different threads that brought us to this place. One was that I needed police music for my film that I made, the Super 8 that I shot. I had a camera permanently glued to my face for the whole adventure. And eventually I made a movie out of it for which I needed police music. And I didn't want to just play the records. So I wanted to use alternatives. So I went in and checked out jams that we did on stage, other avenues that, unexplored on albums, just all this kind of other police stuff, and folded it and made the film track out of it. The film score. The movie is called Does Everyone Stare? The Home Movie from Hell. And then the other thread is that after the police, for 20 years, I was a hired gun film composer. And just being an employee forces you to learn things that you would never go to instinctively as an artist. An artist follows their own instincts. If you're a hired gun, you go where the director tells you. And if the director wants strings, which is what got me into orchestra, Francis Coppola turns around and says, this all sounds great, this Rumblefish music, but we need strings. I had to go figure out strings, and that began my journey, my decades-long adventure with orchestra. My 20 years as a film composer gave me an involuntary education in how you work with orchestra. And it's my new passion. That's what I do now, is I arrange for orchestra. So put that together with those, and then, by the way, I've been doing concerts of this for decades, of film score music and various other concerti. The Pittsburgh Symphony will commission a piece, or the Dallas Symphony will commission, and I go and I play those. And then I start to introduce the occasional obscure police song, instrumental, and they would have such an impact. I mean, even obscure ones that I wrote, that I thought, actually, I'll confess, management, the bosses said, "Hey, Stewart, how about if you play some hits in there?"
Yeah.
And I thought, no, 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 no. And then I thought, yes, yes, yes. And I put together those derangements, which I felt kind of an ownership of, and the orchestra chops. And that brings us to the Police Deranged for Orchestra.
Which I think is great, you know, and every breath
And by
you
the
take.
way, just because it's orchestra doesn't mean it's namby-pamby. This is a raging, rocking orchestra. But, you know, an orchestra can burn down the house, and that's my intention. It's not like classical music or anything. It's still me banging shit on the drums
Yeah.
and the orchestra raging.
Which is fantastic. I mean, I love that. And the first track you dropped was Every Breath You Take, your rearrangement and derangement of that, which is great. You know, I actually brought you on stage doing one of those things in New Jersey years ago, the State Theater, New Brunswick, New Jersey. I brought you on stage, but of course, you know, I mean, you probably wouldn't have seen me from there, and you've probably had a lot of people do intros for you before. But I remember doing that quite a few years ago. I was excited to actually introduce you when you were doing one of your orchestra and different kinds of shows. But this is cool. You know, are you going to get to tour? Are you going to tour some of this at some point, Stewart?
Oh yeah, it's not so much a tour, but I've been playing this show for over a year now. It's not so much a tour because I don't hire an orchestra and take them on the road. That I'd never be able to afford that. That's a lot of breakfasts I got to buy.
Yeah.
So the business model is the other way around. They hire me. The Atlanta Symphony is playing a show Thursday night. They have a whole season. They're going to play either some violin concerto or a bit of Rachmaninoff for piano, or let's get that drummer guy Stewart over here to play his thing. And so they're there. They're playing something. They hire me. The orchestra's sitting there, and I just fly in. I meet them at 2:00 in the afternoon. We rehearse for 2.5 hours. Doors at 7, and we play the show that night because orchestras can do that.
They absolutely can. These guys are absolutely so talented, which I think is incredible. Hey, before I let you go, Stewart, and I'm excited about the new record, and we're pumped to let everybody know about it and hear it. I wanted to ask you, we talk about the drummers that you were, you know, when you did the Taylor Hawkins tribute show, you and I had spoken before about it, and you know how it was almost like an audition for the Foo Fighters drummer.
I was just about to say that. That's exactly what the joke was.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the new Foo Fighters drummer? Well, they just had the biggest, baddest auditions ever with everybody. So they got a pretty good idea. I don't know what they're going to do. I know what they should do.
Yeah.
And I suspect that I've got a pretty good guess as to what they're going to do. But I can't say that because all my other drummer buddies would be pissed off.
Now you're friends with a lot of different drummers, and these guys are.
Oh yeah, brothers of the stick. You know, guitarists are all jealous of each other.
Yeah.
Drummers are all best buddies. We love each other.
I love that about you, and you know, we have many mutual friends, obviously for that reason. You know, but I want to ask you about, you know, some of those guys, you know, the Danny Careys, Chad Smiths, and you know, so who are some of your favorite drummers? You mentioned, and who are the guys that you've hung out with? Like Neil Peart, you mentioned, of course.
My buddy Neil Peart, the professor, he came over here many times. I got lots of stuff with him. Danny comes over. In fact, one time I got a new drum set, and I got my other one sitting right there, and I got 2 drum sets. So I called both Neil and Danny Carey to come aggress upon these new drums, kind of kick them in. And they came over here, which means that I get to play guitar with 2 of the heaviest drummers on the planet. And so I pick up a guitar and I get to do my 4 guitar chords, you know, power chords with those 2 guys hammering away. But, you know, Taylor as well, big Travis Barker fan. I'm going to go blank here trying to remember everybody. But yeah, I got a lot of Chuckle Buddy drummers.
Yeah, a lot of guys that love you, man. You know, that have. I mean, guys I came up with, you know, in my teenage years who just, you were, and still are, I'm sure, one of their favorite drummers, if not their favorite drummer of all time. It's a beautiful thing. I love to see the way, you know, everybody's warmed each other and passes it on and has that kind of friendship. It's just cool. You know, there's nothing, because music's about that, isn't it? It's about being shared, that love and appreciation for it.
Absolutely. Well, about playing, you know, it's campfire music is the real thing. You know, in this modern age where I get to be the specialist, where you get to pay me to play the music. I get to play on the stage and you get to sit there and take it. That's specialization. But actually, Homo sapiens, are all good at music. Whether you're not necessarily Eric Clapton, but humans are really good at music, and it has a very important function for us, evolutionary. It has a distinct purpose, which is basically sex and procreate. It's the human mating dance, but we're all really good at it. And a couple of people sitting in the living room with acoustic guitars singing Beatles songs, and if they're insurance agents or whatever, or a fireman, that's the real thing. They're not Eric Clapton, but they're transported by making music together, and it's the fully valid human music making experience. You do not have to be Eric Clapton. You do not have to pay me to make music for you. You can make it yourself, and all humans are really good at it. And it's really rewarding. You don't have to be so good. Just out of two guitars, you can transport yourself. And so I'm kind of an evangelist for campfire music.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing, and I love that. And Stewart, I'm excited about this new record, and it's just so great to get to talk to you. I love your passion, and thank you for all the great music you've given us, man. And me, I've been, I was one of those guys who was such a police geek. I mean, every singles B-side would come out, to be someone to talk to or something, you know what I mean? All throughout those years, a live version of Truth Hits Everybody. There were so many things that so it's really great to get to sit here and talk to you and to let everybody know about Police Deranged for Orchestra. And
well, look, thanks for listening.
Yeah, it's great to catch up with you. Stewart, thanks for spending the time with us today, man. It really was awesome. And I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. All right?
Cool.
All right.
I'll be back.
Okay, you got it.
Take care now.
Yeah, thank you, Stewart. Stewart Copeland, everybody. I'm Matt Pinfield. It's KLOS, new and approved. I'll be back with you soon.